Welcome to another episode of WAG of the Tale. I'm Randy Lyman, the pet uncle, and we are continuing our theme of season 2 of WAG of the Tale today. The theme is Home Sweet Home, where animals live. We've been to the zoo, we've been to homes, we've seen the kind of homes that animals build out in the wild, and we've been a couple of times to the Lake Merritt Wild Bird Sanctuary and Wildlife Refuge here in downtown Oakland. We've done a number of shows from here, and today we're doing one more. And today I'm actually inside the bird sanctuary here, and we are going to sit down and talk with Stephanie Benavidez, who is the Supervising Naturalist here at the Rotary Nature Center at Lake Merritt in the sanctuary. And she's agreed to spend some time with us today and talk about what it's like to actually be in charge of taking care of a wildlife refuge in the middle of a big city. Oakland, California is a populous big city. This area where the refuge exists, near downtown, has been growing and changing like crazy for the last 5 or 6 years. And Stephanie is going to talk to us about that. So I'm going to turn the camera around, and we're going to take a look at some of the bits of the lake and the sanctuary and all the birds that are moving around me here, you can see in the background, and hear about some of the challenges that the wildlife sanctuary is facing here in 2016. So let me turn the camera around and we'll meet Stephanie. Here she is. All right, let me move a little closer so I can see closer. And if you're here, please feel free to pose some questions, and I'll pass those on. And we'll let Stephanie talk up. Here she is, and talk a little bit about herself and what do you exactly do here at Lake Merritt.
Okay, well, first of all, I'd like to welcome you all to the oldest wildlife refuge in the nation, established in 1870. As a naturalist, I've taken up the mantle from the first established naturalist, Paul Cavell, who was the first municipal naturalist in 1945. Then I came along in 1974, and I'm now the supervisor of a legacy. And as such, there's a lot of responsibilities for looking for the next naturalist that will hold dear this historical registered landmark that has been here since 1870. What a lot of people don't understand in being a naturalist is my job is not only to maintain the health and the maintenance of the wildlife refuge, is to find a balance between people's recreational need and those of the wildlife that live on this property or migrate to this property. When you think of refuges, think from Gray Lodge to any refuge that you don't have as much human impact as we do here at Lake Merritt, because we had a city built up around the wildlife refuge. In 1870, Samuel Merritt went to Governor Haight, who went to Senator Thomas, and asked for a piece of legislation that would protect the most beautiful piece of wildlife property in the nation. And that legislation is on our website, because when you get to read it, it talks about no capturing, killing, harming any fish in the first paragraph. The second one is a catch-all. Not only does it include birds, wildlife, every species of living creature cannot be harmed. If you did get caught, it was a $500 fine or 6 months in jail. 1870, we don't think, well, today we don't think that's a big thing, but when you think of 1870, when 10 cents would get you flour, bread, eggs, and the man was the breadwinner, so to speak, to have that person in jail for 6 months, not being able to provide for your family, or have $500, which to us is nothing, but it actually was like almost $1 million back in that day, was a pretty extensive fine for that to happen.
Well,
now,
I just got a $260 parking ticket. That seems pretty big to me.
Yeah, but like I said, that was the time when the man had to go and be the worker and women were not allowed. Mm-hmm. And so either they had to try to find some kind of business selling pies or something, or they had to do the extreme, which is in San Francisco, go to the Barbary Coast kind of concept and sell yourself. So they weren't kidding on protecting the wildlife that was here. I came across a situation where in the current year, 2015, of last year, we had a situation where we brought forth the legislation, and I was told that that legislation and the wording only applied if you were hunting. And I said, well, that may be, but the city fathers, when they created the Constitution, never expected podcasts or laptops, and so the right to free speech changes. And so the same thing, the legislation for protecting the wildlife, hunting maybe at that time has a different significance now. It still means the same. You can't harm, kill, or capture any of the animals. Now, what has happened to date? In that legislation, it says 100 rods from where the water meets the land naturally, extending out, is how far the refuge extends. This would actually go all the way up to Park Boulevard. We have pictures where it goes up to past the theater. But throughout the years, that property has been sold off with the growth of people coming in to relocate here in Oakland. And so the wildlife refuge has been encroached on. And there's very small areas, and with migrating wildlife, i.e. the birds in particular, can come to and still do traditionally what they need to do. An example would be, we always hear, I have too many geese here. When we had the avian flu, people were calling and saying, oh, you need to get rid of the geese, or can't go on the lawn because the geese are pooping all over the place. The geese are part of the International Migratory Flyway. 2 seasons, the summer and the winter migration. June 2nd, the geese come here during the summer. They can't help it. They drop all their flight feathers. And for 4 to 5 weeks, as they're eating grass or getting as much nutrients, they will be able to regrow their new feathers, and they leave in different groups at a time. The June 2nd already has left, and then it goes in increments, so to speak, so that by September 2nd, which is the real migratory exchange of the waterfowl on the lake from most of the land birds going to other areas, they have their feathers. And why they don't have their feathers, they're land bound. And what people don't understand, we have made recreational changes to the wildlife refuge to accommodate people's recreational needs. One, walking their dog. I prefer to have the dogs walked on the perimeter. They must be on a leash. When people have them off leash, they let their dogs, what they tell me is letting dogs do what they do. They like to chase, but oh well, the birds will fly away. Well, not during the summer. They can't fly away. And so we end up having to euthanize animals that have been attacked. Most of the time it's an accident. Sometimes it's done on purpose. That's not caring. We want people to exercise their dog to get rid of the obesity, and to have people, what better way to do that? But if you do it on the perimeter, then the birds, when they see you coming, will go toward the water. When you're in between the water and the birds go out into the street. When they go into the street, you got cars that end up either near missing or hitting another car. That's one example. We never had barbecuing down here. Everybody loves coming to the lake. They come for the ambiance, for the water, for showing their friends how beautiful Lake Merritt is, and it is. But you need to use it wisely. When you barbecue under trees, and now we've established designated areas within the wildlife refuge to do your cooking. But when you do barbecuing up against our trees or underneath the trees, the birds who are nesting, they stop nesting because they equate that smoke smell to a fire, forest fire. So now we have 34 trees downtown, in which is now an established rookery in which the herons and the egrets have relocated because they don't want to raise their young here where there's smoke all the time. The other thing is entertainment. Take your headphones off, get off your iPads, get off the Pokemon, and really, really look at the wildlife refuge. Look at how the birds are fishing. Notice that there is a seasonal change. We have pelicans down by the water's edge, and I don't know if he could stand up. You could probably see Hank.
Let's get up and take a walk down there.
Go ahead.
We're going to take a walk down here. Stephanie's been talking about a lot of the changes that have happened over here at Lake Merritt. Okay, and you know what you're seeing here across in the picture, all the apartments and all the buildings and the traffic and everything. Okay, none of this was here. Okay,
Okay, so we'll get right about here.
All right, this is about as close as I can get. We got pelicans down here, and actually all around. Let me just give you a whole look. Okay, there's a lot of trees and everything we can see here, but you know, the park, this whole area was a refuge out to more than I don't know, 1,600 feet out away from the lake. And over time, the city has grown up around Lake Merritt here and has just really encroached. A lot of the land that was the original wildlife refuge has been sold off. And so now the birds and other animals that are here are under increasing pressure from just human activity, from development, from cars and traffic going by. And we're just looking at some pelicans down here on the lake, and I've got one viewer saying, interesting how what we do impacts things we don't know. Yeah, this whole area, you know, I've lived in this area for about 14 years, and I've seen a lot of just new restaurants, new things, new construction, new buildings, new everything growing up here, and it has really just drastically impacted the use of the park, and that in turn has affected all the animals. So you were...
So what I'd like to point out about the pelicans is when I came on in 1974, we had Hector and Helen that were permanently disabled, and they were the showpiece at Lake Merritt. 3:30 I would do feeding for them. They were particular about their fish. They only wanted sole, not mackerel, which we got free one time. They didn't want anything to do with it. The most common pelican here was the brown pelican, and they would come down here and dive for fish because Lake Merritt, a lot of people don't realize, is the estuary arm of the bay. And so the other migration that we don't see is the underwater migration of fish. We get anchovies, we get smelt, we get all different kinds of things that spawn here, and then they grow, and then they go out in the channel to become food for out in the bay. We lost Hector to boating, the yellow nylon boating around December one year. And we think we have human intelligence, but animals have their own intelligence too. Helen was so distraught, she disappeared for a while. She couldn't fly. It turned out that for 2 weeks she was sitting, because I buried Hector out on Furthest Island. She was sitting out on the spot that I had him buried, which is amazing because I'm like, how did you know he was buried there? But for 2 weeks she did her mourning. Helen had died at the age of 29 years. 27th was the oldest in the wild. 29, she was the oldest here. We ended up during the worst storm in December and January. I got a call from a man. It was synchronistic. His name was Joe Benavidez, and my name is Benavidez. And he had rescued an injured pelican, one of two, the other the wolves got, and through Fish and Game, you know, relocated him down here because he heard we had a pelican feeding program. And I called Hank. Since we got Hank, in all the years that I had been here, when I had Hector and Helen, we only had wild white pelicans, 70 of them, recorded in the Tribune, come down and stay for an hour and then disappear. Never saw any wild ones again. They do migrate across the Bay Area. Not until I got Hank 12 years ago. Hank was visited 5 years after being with me by one white pelican. Would come and go. Next year, same white pelican, but brought two others. Now, these are wild migrating pelicans that come to visit Hank. Could be because they migrated down the Pacific Ocean, that this is part of his family. Who knows? But since then, the number has been as high as 26 wild pelicans that visit Lake Merritt in all these years. And we lay claim to fame that we have both the brown, California brown, and the American white pelican visiting here at Lake Merritt of the 6 to 8 species of pelicans in the world. That's phenomenal. That means the health of the lake is healthy to support fishing birds.
Oh, okay.
So, you know, people always say it's dead. No, it's not dead. You know, we had the water quality team, the Lake Merritt Institute, a lot of people help clean the lake, but they were using the formula for freshwater lakes. We're a saltwater lake. Once they understood that we were impacting by putting in or wanting to put in certain kinds of trash catchers, that would also affect the plankton would be caught up in that, which are actually the babies of everything. Once they understood that, then we found a balance of the proper trash collectors, and the fish are coming back in numbers, which is providing enough food for cormorants, for the pelicans, and any of our fish eating, the terns and other things like that. Okay?
So the state of the lake is in
It's good health.
is in good health and sort of coming back from a decline in some way?
Yes. So you can't have a city this large and not have trash affect the impact.
Oh, I know that. Like I've seen after like a Raiders game or something, I've seen the lake just full of cups that have just beer cups that have washed down from the creeks that pour into the lake.
Mm-hmm. And once we started an education program, and people are really caring, don't get me wrong, it's that they're not educated enough to understand the value of this legacy that has been safeguarded since 1870 to being put here in the year 2016, and hopefully to continue for our future generations in another 100 and so coming years. There have been talks at one time to fill in the lake, and I'm going to come over here because I got other things.
Okay.
So there have been talks of filling in the lake, making it like Venice kind of thing, which is why we have the gondolas that are here. There have been people who wanted to fill the lake and put in homes was another suggestion. But the importance of Lake Merritt being a registered historical landmark means that we're part of the legacy and history of California with pre-Columbian and Spanish and everything that goes to making California, California. The concept that Merritt brought forth to Haight and to Senator Thompson to safeguard what he thought the most beautiful piece of property in the world with the wildlife was never thought of. Yellowstone came in 1872, that's 2 years after. 15 years later, another city back east created a wildlife refuge, and not until 1903 was the first federal refuge system at Pelican Island created. Do you know what that concept of here in Oakland, where we believe in sanctuary, where the world meets with different cultures, to have a wildlife refuge that is that gem, that multifaceted portion? And there goes a brown pelican now.
Oh, flying across the lake?
Yeah. No, I'm sorry, it's a great blue heron. It's a great blue because it's dark. You don't see any white. So a great blue heron, which is just about, comes up to your shoulder.
Wow.
That's another fishing bird. I mean, we have a lot of beauty. We want you to come and use the wildlife refuge, not as a park, but what it is. It's a wildlife refuge where you will see life go on. When ducklings are hatched, unfortunately, the herons might eat them, the gulls might eat them, but there will be some survivors. That's kind of like the balance. We have hawks that go and capture a large gull. They might take a gosling down, but that's part of life. You know, we've had people throw rocks when they see these kind of things going on, but this is what happens out in the real world that we don't see a part of. We need to celebrate, and so when you come, like the crows now are up there, the pigeons are phenomenal. You know, pigeons never run into each other like cars on the freeway. There's always a perfect spacing.
Yeah.
And
Sorry, I just had
you have to catch that. You
shot.
really do, because I point out to people that Jack over here, pigeon, says, hey, I got to take off, and nobody hesitates to take off with him, because they're not going to question what Jack saw or stand there and say, hey, why is Jack leaving? That's self-survival right there. And like I said, they never run into each other. They call them sky rats. And I tell people, you know, even pigeons deserve this sanctuary, because they are responsible, their lineage, so to speak, for saving soldiers when they use them for messengers to carry back and forth, until the Germans had created the art of using hawks to take those pigeons down. So, of course, they need to be part of this. And the geese, like I said, they do what geese do. People say, well, people are feeding them bread, they're opportunists like children at a piñata. You put a piñata up, you break it, everybody and their brother runs after that candy. But once the candy's gone, they go back to eating dinner or doing whatever else. The geese will take advantage of bread that you bring them. Most places have stagnant water, fresh water, and it's definitely not good to just have people feed bread, because there's nothing to really eat it. When the bread's thrown in the lake, and people may disagree with me on this, we have fish that will eat it. How do we know? Because when you see the bread there, you see it moving, and all these little circles around it. Those are the fish that are eating that. Today's bread probably has more grain in it than the bread of way back when it was unbleached and all white. You have 9 grain, 7 grain, everything. But we do encourage you to kind of hold off on bringing huge clumps of bread. We understand that people have a curiosity of having that one-to-one with wildlife. Okay? We sell seeds, so you can come in and exchange. We don't want the overabundance of bread, but I don't have a problem in watching parents teaching their children that relationship, that empathy, that one-on-one with wildlife. The geese will never be truly wild, because the city has now greatly impacted that wildness in them. What they do is adapt. They adapt as fast as the changes that are coming upon them, the best way that they can. And if you turn your camera, you'll see that the pelicans feel comfortable enough to start coming in.
We're, by the way, I'm inside the gated off area of the refuge here. We can't normally come into here, but we've actually gone inside.
Hi, Hank.
Where all the birds get to be around. We've got a couple of pools here that are normally both filled with water.
But
this one's
being cleaned.
This one is being cleaned. And there's another one here, and you can, during the summer when these are full, you can see the birds always just splashing around. But in the meantime, we've got the geese.
One going in there now.
We've got the geese sleeping. We've got the pelicans going over there, going for a swim in the water over there. I kind of need to keep my distance a little bit so as not to be.
You can walk over, but that'll just disrupt the geese. You could probably walk over here.
All right, maybe I'll try to get a little closer.
Slow.
Here we go. The other pelicans are coming up to join in the water. And we'll be right back with some more questions, but I got to just give you this little moment inside of a wild bird sanctuary. This is an area that people cannot normally go. So we're getting a real exclusive here. Oh, but the geese have something to say about it. So
birds feel comfortable enough. They understand that the fence, that this is a secure area for them. And actually, if you look all over the place, you'll see feathers. And that's another example that all the feathers drop off. Because when they're flying in winds, and somebody asked me this about a week ago, the birds normally do a V shape. And so the leader takes the brunt of the wind. And then that wind carries over the other ones. And then when he gets tired, he'll drop to the back and another one will go in the front. For pelicans, like I said, pelicans go up and down the Pacific Ocean, coastal. When you look up in the air, you may be seeing black and white and thinking they're gulls. But ever so often, that white will stop and then you'll see a circular formation. Not the spread out formation that goes though, but a tight one. And that's when pelicans are exchanging leaders. And when you're looking at them, you'll see the black and then it disappears because the blacks are only in the primary and when they turn, it disappears and you only see the white. Here comes a white pelican in now.
That was behind the tree, but I'm sure you could hear that nice splash landing. So what kind of work do you do here at the Nature Center to try to educate the public and to do, to do some of the conservation and preservation work here? What's a typical day look like for you?
Well, first of all, we are open 7 days a week. We have a museum called the Rotary Nature Center. It used to be called the Rotary Natural Science Center. Part of the seed money was from the Rotary Club. And for the purpose of housing the staff that does the interpretive education for the public. It's kind of like the house that Jack built, the refuge, then the naturalist, and then the building. And in that building we do presentations. Like I said, we're open 7 days a week. We also have live animals on the inside that we use for our school presentations. Guinea pigs, mice, lizards, turtles, tortoises. People come in, they see a museum that helps you think outside the box. So this morning you met or heard a young man who came in through the door screaming. We do everything we can to educate, dispel myths and superstitions. And I always tell the children, no matter how young and how old, to ask me a question they really don't have the answer to. Some of the questions that I'll hear is, are they real? Well, real, you really want to know, were they alive at one time, or are you saying real as are they made out of plastic? We have an example of a mountain lion, and I don't know if you have time to walk in to see, but that could be some other time. We have a mountain lion because we have mountain lions in Oakland. We have now fragmented the territory that wildlife use up in the hill. With a drought that's here, they're sticking to areas where there are backyard pools. There's the cougar research that have cameras throughout the hill area to track the movements of the mountain lion. We know Berkeley has had several incidents with mountain lions. We had a mountain lion hit at the exit of Joaquin Miller Road at 6 o'clock in the morning. That was 100 pounds. But they call them ghost cats for a good reason. They pretty much still stay hidden, But there's less and less land for them to cross, and so they're usually up in the hills, staying close to whatever water source, and lots of deer. But ever so often, we'll get deer down here, downtown. And we'll call Fish and Game, and Fish and Game will say, well, why don't we wait until later? And I go, well, we're at Harrison, where there's nothing but traffic. Yes, we know that they follow the creeks out of the hills into the downtown where there's lots of grass or stuff like that. But we got to get them out of here safely. Mm-hmm. And so Fish and Game came, helped me catch one between the banks and everything. And we got it up to the hills and back in its area that it belonged to. Wildlife is all around us, and the nice thing about the wildlife refuge is that when people really come down to walk, they're sitting up against a tree, they picked a favorite tree. We have beautiful trees from around the world. Our city fathers put trees from around the world so that people who were pioneers coming wouldn't be so homesick. They could go to a Greek laurel, or they could go over to the French lilac, or we also have visitors like this Muscovy duck. It's a domesticated duck.
Look at the coloring on the head of this duck.
It's from South America originally, but people start bringing Muscovies over for food. And now we get some that just show up out of the blue because people have them and they can't take care of them. And that's another thing people need to understand. When you get baby ducks, or any kind of baby bird, but mostly the baby ducks, if you make them people-oriented, you can't put them here. They think, well, we'll bring them to the lake. They're vulnerable as babies. They're vulnerable to dogs, they're vulnerable to predators, they're vulnerable to people who may or might, mistreat them because they're trusting. because they've been raised by people in the family, and the family say, well, I can't take care of them. The worst thing that you could do to a duck is not keep it in water so it can preen, because once in a while we've had incidences where people bring their ducks and there's no oil on the feathers and they drown. Now we can get them if they're here. We want people to tell us if they have something, and then we can find the right home for them. Because we can't keep roosters here either, and people get all those baby chicks during Easter and find out they have roosters, and they drop the roosters off here, and then you can't have roosters within the city of Oakland, and then we're running around trying to catch roosters. We want you to come down to the Wildlife Refuge. Come to the Rotary Nature Center. I have staff here. We do programs. Even if you find something, we've had people come in from Los Gatos to bring me scat, and that's animal poop, to determine what it was, and it turned out it was mountain lion, you know, because it looks like a cigar. It's got rings around it, and the guy was kind of happy and put two and two together because he kept seeing scratch marks on his garage, and I said, well, you got a mountain lion, that's what it is. And just like a cat, they got to scratch their claws. They're like, you know, to watch out. So we have natural inquiry. We want to maintain children. We have a program called Young Naturalists. We have Touchy Earth. We have Shake, Rattle, and Roll, that allow children to grow up in a wildlife environment, whether it's here at Lake Merritt, where everybody, this is a totally wildlife refuge for all people. It doesn't matter what economic status you have. The birds don't care if you have 3 heads, 2 arms, or if you can't. This is an equal wildlife refuge that belongs to everybody, okay? The Redwoods, which is in Joaquin Miller Park, because you asked what my typical day is, I not only oversee the wildlife refuge, I oversee open space, which is Joaquin Miller, King Estate, Shepherd Canyon, or any area that doesn't have facilities. I have the Oakland City Stables. The concessionaire, after it's been vacated for 12 years, is putting that together for the public. I have the Digital Art and Culinary Academy, which is a teen center. And I have 26 community gardens. So that's pretty much, in my typical day, things to do.
That's a lot.
And then it's spread out sharing with my staff like Constance and volunteers and Michelle, who you met in the office, and doing citizen science. So to show the value of the wildlife refuge, citizen science or the Bio Blitz is very helpful. Anybody can participate in that. And if you don't know what a species is, you can use iNaturalist application. But what we want to do is document all the different species that live here alongside of humans and the value of what that is. Professor Carlton, who's a professor on the East Coast, Jim Carlton, started here at the age of 15 documenting every marine aquatic wildlife in the water. And now he's a big time professor. He brings his students from back east to the lake once a year, and he has a program going on where they have submerged metal to see when in September, they're going to pull them out to see what's attached themselves to it, to count the different kinds of species that are here at Lake Merritt. But we have free programs. Primarily, we're a free museum. We have free programs that you can come and participate with, that's located on the calendar on the inside. You can also do birthday parties with us, where we just did one with turtles and tortoises. And we pretty much answer any question that has to do with wildlife issues, and even if it isn't wildlife issues, anything in the city of Oakland under the Office of Parks and Recreation. Okay?
All right, well, I appreciate you answering all of my questions. Let me just show everyone here, last look around. Here is the Rotary Nature Center that we've been referring to. It's been here since, what, the 50s?
1953 was when it was built by the Rotary Club number 3. And so San Francisco, back, I think in New York was number 1, number 2 was San Francisco, and we had number 3. Oh, you missed that one.
Oh, we're looking.
So that, you see the numbers are increasing.
Yes, we've got almost a dozen pelicans over here. Excuse me.
And you notice, you mentioned about how you enjoy watching the birds dip their pouches into the water. Another reason for you, the public, to understand, taking your trash out with you, because they can end up swallowing bags or cups or anything that might lodge in their throat when they're scooping up fish. The difference between the white pelicans and the brown pelicans, white pelicans need to have a community of other pelicans so that when they fish, they put their heads down and fish. No matter which way they go, one of the pelicans will get something. So they are a team. Brown pelicans are individuals. They pretty much will go off on their own. You might see several of them, but they will dive from the air 30 feet or hover on wind currents a foot above and then capture their fish. The little cormorant that's just taken off has to fly into the wind to be able to go around and get over to the trees, which maybe you have a chance to walk down and look at that naked tree, what looks like a Dr. Seuss tree with nests in it, like the truffle trees. And we can walk a little bit over this way.
We're just gonna walk down here. You can see part of the grassy area in the wildlife refuge here. And here in the background, these are islands out in the lake. Humans aren't allowed to go there.
5 man-made islands.
5 man-made islands that are exclusively intended as nesting islands for the various birds.
The first one was created in 1925.
1925, I'm hearing, is when the first one was created.
And depending on where you stand, like from here, the islands are put in such a way that it looks like one huge island. It depends on where you stand on the perimeter of the lake, that you'll see that there are 5 separate. And you can see that truffle tree in between the green ones. That's the island in the back that the cormorants are in.
Oh, I can zoom in here. All right,
Okay.
There we have some cormorants nesting up in a dead tree on a separate island that's behind the one that we're looking at here.
Right. So when the Carquinez and the Bay Bridge work was being done, it forced the cormorants to look elsewhere, and they couldn't find property on the islands because Alcatraz is already full and with other birds nesting. Then they came over and took over the dead trees, which were perfect because they get direct sun from above and below without any leaves covering the nest. And again, that's a fishing bird, so it also speaks to the health of the lake because they're pulling fish out of the lake to feed their young. There's a egret down underneath the Australian tea tree down there.
All right, we'll see if we can.
I don't know if you can zoom in that far down.
We can take a look at an egret down here by the lake. It's a little shaky because I'm zoomed in here.
Right. And so when people come to look at the egrets, they'll notice that egrets and the herons are different sizes. And nature's designed different sized legs for fishing. So not only can the big American egret come in and fish close to shore, it can go farther out. And then that leaves food for the snowy egrets or the ones with the shorter legs.
Oh, okay.
We have the totem pole. That's another way of finding us. Our building is brown to emulate the buildings that you would see in the state and a national forest.
With the big apartment skyscraper in the background.
Mm-hmm. Would you believe that skyscraper had a house on it that belonged to Henry J. Kaiser? And the totem pole came from San Francisco, and it was hand carved by a person from the Simpson tribe in the northwest or northeast passage with all traditional tools. And what we put on it for totem is the bird, the eagle at the top for the wildlife, for the birds, the sea serpent on the bottom for the water. We have the monkey for the playfulness of people, any age. We have the snake, which represents a reptile. So we made that truly a wildlife totem pole.
Wow. All right. Well, on that note, I think we're coming to the end of our time. I want to say thank you very much for taking all this time and letting us into the wildlife refuge and just showing us all the things. It's some of the people have been commenting here. We don't realize the impacts that we're having. I mean, I've lived around here. I know this is a great place for people to come and enjoy the natural environment. But there's a lot of birds here, a lot of other animals. It all gets impacted, and we don't really see that. The whole fact of all these animals that people abandon here. It's like we don't really see that in terms of our daily life, but it does affect everything.
Could you say, everything's happening at the zoo? Well, it does happen every day here at the Wildlife Refuge. There's always something, and that's what I appreciate, that in all the years I've been here, there's not a day goes by I don't see something new. Whether it's a dragonfly, whether it's a baby squirrel teasing a baby hawk, or watching a flower. There's so much to see. When we look at the details, when we appreciate and have empathy with other species, then we are more empathetic with humans.